Buyers don't think that they can get qualified.
Exactly.
And when you get them to a good lender like Scott and Go Mortgage, they're surprised to find that they can.
And that's one of the best feelings in the world. You know, you have somebody that comes in and you see it all the time, and it's happened countless times. Somebody comes in, they have no idea, they don't think they can, and then you say, yes, you actually can go fulfill your dream. And that's one of the best things about this job.
It's a good feeling.
All right, welcome everybody to who's listening and watching the podcast. This is Realty FC. It's our very first podcast. Man, I'm excited. My name's Chris Hild. I'm a broker here at Realty FC. I'm the host, and with me I have Michelle Lewis, also a broker at Realty FC. And how you doing?
I'm doing well, Chris.
Welcome to the podcast, very first one. You excited?
I am excited.
Well, I mean, we started off great this morning. I went to Dunkin' Donuts. I asked for one sandwich, and I got two for the price of one. How many? Can you beat that?
It's going to be a good day.
It's going to be a great day.
Yeah.
And you know what else I overheard this morning is you made a pretty big purchase. Is that right?
I did.
Tell us about that. What is that?
We went to Tennessee last weekend for the Rod Run.
Yeah.
And we ended up stopping at a camper dealership, and we bought a new travel trailer.
Oh, man.
Yeah, so we get to go pick it up next weekend.
Okay, so you get to go back to Tennessee. Now, what spurred you to buy a motorhome?
Well, we've camped for years, and we sold our last one that we had 2 years ago, and we've missed it. But a couple of weeks ago, our grandson said, "Meemaw, Pappy, I really miss camping."
Yeah,
that's all it took. That's all it took. We took him with us last weekend and went to a camper show, and had him trying out bunks and figuring out what was going to work best for us, and we found exactly what we wanted up in Tennessee.
So basically he sold you the RV.
He
sold you on the idea. How old is this little guy?
Yeah, he's 9. He just turned 9.
I need to hire him as a real estate agent.
You know, he will be a good one someday. He's been my assistant ever since he was big enough for me to start toting him around with me.
Awesome.
He used to go on showings. Yeah.
Well, hey, you know what? Once you get it, the weather, I mean, this morning was a nice, crisp fall weather. It's coming in. Leaves is going to start changing. I think you're going to really enjoy it.
We will. It's campfire weather for sure.
Awesome. Okay, well, hey, listen, we've got some great people coming on our show. We're going to start off today with a lender, Scott Brookshire with Go Mortgage.
Oh, great.
He's an expert in his field, and the purpose of the podcast is really just to educate everyone out there.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
And I think a lot of people have some misconceptions when it comes to the lending world, and I think we're going to get a lot of those myths answered today.
That's great.
Yep.
That's
so
great.
let's welcome Scott Brookshire to the show. So welcome, Scott. How you doing this morning?
I'm good, Chris. How are you today?
Good. Hey, Scott, you are our very first guest on the Realty FC podcast. How's that feel?
I feel honored. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Okay, great. So, hey, look, everyone always asks me, so how's the real estate market? What would you say?
I'd say it's awesome.
Yeah, of course. I mean, so that's a question you probably could ask every day.
Every
day would probably be a different answer. Because it goes up and down, doesn't it?
It does. But you know what? When is it not a good time to buy a house, right? Where can you put your money that's not going to appreciate every year? Where can you not pay 100% interest rate on rent? No, buy a house. Why would you not? You know, rents are going up. Mortgages are still cheaper in a lot of cases than renting. So no, I think the real estate market's awesome, and there's still a lot of demand out there right now.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. But you know what? That's still scary for a lot of people.
It is. Everybody sees in the news and the hype, and oh my gosh, it's horrible, and rates and this and that and the other. And in many cases, we find that when we bring them into the office and sit down and talk numbers with them, and they can actually see true numbers on paper, that fear dissipates. And, they become more comfortable with the idea. And it's like, oh, hey, this isn't that bad. And the new coin phrase these days are rates are temporary, homes are forever. Yep. You're going to get out of that interest rate at some point in the future and put yourself in a little bit of a better situation.
Yeah, you got it, Scott. I've worked with you several times in the past, and I mean, you're awesome at what you do. You're expert in your field, and the point of this podcast is we're here to educate, right, and take that fear away. So I think no one better than to have you here on the show. So I think we should just dive in and start, tackling some of these myths and take away that fear for some of these folks.
Let's go. I'm ready.
So before we really dive in, but tell me a little bit about your background, because I'm telling everybody that you're a lender, you're an expert, but tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I got into this business in 2004, I believe it was.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So almost 20 years. Before that, I was in the finance world as a controller, ran a finance department for a startup company for about 5 years. That kind of went under for, we won't talk about that story.
Yeah.
And
not for this show.
Yeah, right. And hey, I came up here. A really good friend of mine was in the mortgage business, joined up, and here I am 19 years later doing the same thing, and I love it.
No, well, you're doing a great job of it. I'm glad to have you here. So what does a lender have to do with the whole buying process?
Well, we're kind of the first piece, right?
Well, so that's a good point. You're the very first piece. So, and that's something I think that's important for folks out there that's listening and watching, that you are the first piece. But what a lot of times I think what buyers will do is, what do you think? They start looking for a house.
They go online.
Right?
They find a house that they saw on Zillow or a website, and they're like, oh, I want to go see this house.
Yeah.
And they call you, and, well, I don't want to get pre-qualified. I just want to go see if I like the house first. And, there's nothing worse than going to fall in love with something and then going to speak to the lender and find out that it's not really within your reach.
That's true. I've come across that many times over the years.
Yeah,
yes,
so,
of course.
So it's important for a buyer, for potential buyers, to come sit down with a mortgage professional before. Understand what you're getting into, understand your numbers, understand your budget, what you are approved for, so that you don't go to that home and find yourself sorely disappointed.
Yeah, and it's just as important to do that, because in the atmosphere of the market right now, and even in like past couple of years, there's a lot of buyers out there, and there's being multiple offers on properties. Mm-hmm. So if you go out and look at a home, you fall in love with it, and then you have to get approved, there's a little bit of time for that process. And during that time, another buyer might have already been approved and beat you to that home because you're waiting for the approval. So it's, again, another reason why, to have that step.
Correct.
Being first.
100% agree.
So with that said, about how long would you say it takes to get pre-qualified?
So it depends. That's one of the things I love about this business. Every transaction and every borrower is a little bit different, right? So whether you are salaried, whether you're self-employed, everybody has a different background and things that we have to dive into to figure things out. Sometimes, little as 20 minutes.
Yeah.
If
we love those as realtors, don't we?
Exactly.
Definitely.
Definitely. If you have multiple properties, if you own businesses yourself, you're self-employed, sometimes that process can take a little bit longer because we have to dive into extra levels of financials and assets and understanding the full picture just a little bit better.
Yeah.
But as long as you come to your lender prepared with the documentation that we tell you to bring with you, same day in most cases. Sometimes it takes longer, but we try to have folks in a place to start going out to look at homes with you guys within the same day.
Yeah, and I know that might sound a little cumbersome, but don't worry. Scott is going to walk you through the entire process. I've seen a lot of buyers that, get a little scared, get a little nervous about that whole thing, but don't let it scare you. Just let Scott do his job, and he'll walk you through it and hold your hand through the whole process.
And they really do.
Yeah.
They really do.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's so many times buyers or potential buyers, they don't think that they can get qualified.
Exactly.
And they're surprised then when you get them to a good lender like Scott and Go Mortgage. They're surprised to find that they can.
And that's one of the best feelings in the world. You have somebody that comes in, and you see it all the time, and it's happened, countless times. Somebody comes in, they have no idea, they don't think they can, and then you say, yes, you actually can go fulfill your dream. And that's one of the best things about this job.
Mm-hmm. It's a good feeling.
And, Scott, so I mentioned the word pre-qualification, but there's also, in the real estate world, pre-approval. Mm-hmm. Could you get into a little bit of the distinction so folks out there understand?
Sure. Pre-approval is probably the most important of the two, right?
Sure.
Especially in the competitive market that we're in. You want to have a pre-approval in your hand. That means that we as the lender, we have fully reviewed your credit report, we've reviewed your assets and your income, and we have done the preliminary steps in your pre-approval if you will, to make sure that yes, you can in fact afford this home. And in certain cases, we'll even go to the depths of actually having your loan underwritten ahead of time. So you know when you're walking into a home that yes, I can buy this house. I'm not going to have any problems. So that's a pre-approval. Yeah. Pre-qualification is a borrower coming in. I haven't reviewed income. I haven't reviewed assets. We're going to perform a credit check in most cases just to make certain that the credit is at least there. But that's a pre-qualification. It means you are pre-qualified based on the information that you have told me. Yeah. We haven't reviewed a thing yet.
Yeah. So from a seller standpoint, you want to see a pre-approval.
You are spot on.
When you're comparing buyers, when you see an offer, something I think that, informational purposes to know the difference between pre-approval and pre-qualification.
Correct.
So,
pre-approval is always better.
Yeah. So that's good stuff. So with that said, I don't want, again, it to scare people that you're giving numbers or people always think, well, I don't make enough. Well, you never know. You have to just contact a lender. It's pretty harmless, it's not very painful. You talk about credit score, so let's dive into that.
Okay.
I mean, a lot of people might think, oh, my credit's not good enough. Again, don't ask yourself, ask a lender.
Correct.
So dive into a little bit about what credit scores are good, what works, what doesn't.
So I'll start with, I guess, the urban myth of my credit score is X because Credit Karma told me it was. Well,
okay.
Let's go ahead and get that out of the way
or
now.
Artificial intelligence.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Most of the online sources to look at credit are not going to give you a true idea of what your credit score is. They're designed with certain different algorithms in mind that say, hey, this is what we think it is based on this. Why don't you do this and maybe you'll have this score, so on and so forth. It's not going to be factual. You need to go in and get a true credit check performed by a mortgage professional so we understand what your actual FICO score is. That is what's going to drive what programs you qualify for, how much you might have to put down in a given situation. It drives the entire pre-approval process is an actual credit score. And, sometimes we'll have folks come in and say, my credit score is 700. And I'm like, okay, well, where did you see that at? Well, Credit Karma said so. And we'll see it go either way. We'll see, all right, it might actually be a 650 or it might actually be a 750.
Oh, wow.
You just don't know.
It's that far off.
It can vary that widely. So get a real credit check done. It's not going to hurt your credit. It's a mortgage inquiry. It is not going to be damaging in any nature. And in most cases, after the credit bureaus have seen it was a mortgage inquiry, your score, if not affected, is going to go right back to where it was before it started.
I want to repeat that because I think, Michelle, you might agree with me that that's important for folks to know because if their credit score is, in a lower end, they get the fear of, oh, it's going to lower my credit score even more. So I want folks out there to realize that it's not going to affect your credit score. And like Scott said, if it does, it's very small and it's going to come back right away.
Correct.
Because they're going to see it's a mortgage inquiry.
And we can show, okay, we'll show somebody who has that fear after we've done it. We'll take the inquiry off and show them that it didn't change their score at all.
Perfect.
And so you just come in and sit down with a professional and let us show you what your real situation is.
Awesome. Good stuff. So now that we've talked a little bit about that information, what kind of loan programs are most popular that you're seeing right now?
Your most popular programs are going to be FHA conventional. If you're a qualified veteran, VA loan, very popular right now. We've seen a kind of an uptick in that product as of late.
Let me interrupt you real quick. So FHA conventional, I mean, we understand what those are,
sure.
But if I'm not mistaken, FHA probably gets you a lower down payment than conventional. Is that
correct?
What you're looking at?
Correct. So FHA is going to be geared more towards that smaller down payment, towards a borrower profile that's not going to be in the upper 700 credit score range.
Yeah.
Going to give you a little bit of a better interest rate. The guidelines are a little more flexible when it comes to debt to income ratios and other certain things.
Yeah.
Conventional financing is going to be, larger down payment, higher credit scores, larger loan amounts, especially in this market. You're going to go into a conventional situation. So again, it's a matter of just looking at the three key items: income, assets, and credit. And okay, Mr. and Mrs. Borrower, this is the program that I think fits you best. Here are your options. Which one works best for you based on your goals? And whether it's conventional or FHA makes a big difference in the market we're in too right now. So, if conventional and FHA offers are being submitted on a home at the same time, we need to make sure that that you as a borrower are educated and you know both of your options in case you have to make a change.
Yeah.
Just due to the competitive nature. But
Right.
so FHA, conventional, USDA is a very popular product in this market. It's 100% financing loan through the U.S. Department of Agriculture. A little more restrictive, if you will. Does have income caps, so household income can't be over a certain amount. Credit score, need to have a little bit of a better credit score with a USDA loan, but it's a fantastic program. People take great advantage of that. And then, like I said, VA, for qualified veterans, probably the best loan out there, in my opinion.
Right.
And then there's a whole other level of loan programs that are out there now, bank statement programs, profit and loss based programs for those that are self-employed. Okay. There's a whole other level of loan programs that are out there. If you don't fit in the standard four loan box, we're going to find a solution for you to try to buy a home.
Sure. Is it safe to say, I mean, you got loan programs for first-time home buyers, veterans, low-income investors, new construction?
All of it.
All of it, yeah.
Yep.
So you cover all those. And I just want to point out real quick that we're not expecting everyone out there to remember what all Scott's saying. The point is, we're telling you about it just to become somewhat familiar. But if you really want to know it, just contact Scott.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Right? So, and he'll refresh your memory and all that kind of stuff. Because I know Michelle and I, we're in real estate. We're not loan professionals.
Right.
We don't try to even memorize any of that kind of stuff. We lean on them for that expertise. And so don't fear that you don't know enough. Just contact Scott and he'll walk you through it all. Mm-hmm. So for a loan process, how long would you say it would take for a typical buyer to go from, mortgage application to closing?
We usually gauge a month.
About 30 days.
About 30 days.
Yeah.
In situations, we can tighten that window down. If we expedite some things, there's certain parts of the process that are title work, appraisal, things that take time. If you order an appraisal, it could take it a couple of weeks to get in. Title work, the same. So we try to allot 30 days for the process from the date you go under contract until the date you close.
Is that pretty typical with all the loan programs?
For the most part, certain programs like rehab loans or construction loans, you're going to see those take a lot longer, 60, 75 days, just because there's so many other moving parts that go along with those programs. Right. But for the most part, most folks are fitting within a 30-day window.
Yeah. Now, you just mentioned rehab loans. I think people have a misconception about that because they watch a lot of HGTV.
Sure.
What is that?
what?
I'm approved for this amount of money, so if I buy a house that's only this much, I can get all that money.
Not necessarily.
But that's not the way it works.
That is
very
not the way it
involved
works.
program.
It is a different program. Contractors become involved, processes become involved. The biggest thing that most folks don't like to hear is that you can't do the work yourself.
Right.
You do have to have a non-related general contractor that's going to come in and do the work for you. It can't be you, and a lot of times that's a turnoff for some buyers because they can do the work themselves. They want to do the work themselves, but unfortunately, the lending will not allow you to do the work yourselves. So it does have to have a third party that comes in and does that. So, we bring that into account. And as soon as somebody asks me about rehab, that's usually the first thing I tell them. And then that drives whether or not we continue that conversation or not.
Right.
And sometimes rehab is a fantastic product for folks. And it is a fantastic product for folks to use if it fits. Again, in the competitive world that we're in right now, rehab in a purchase world can be a little bit tough, especially with the amount of cash buyers that are out there in the world, and the process that a rehab loan takes. But again, they're fantastic. So I don't ever try to shy anybody away from them. And they're there they serve their purpose, and they're great.
Okay.
For the right buyer.
Right.
Okay, so can we maybe talk about why it takes so long, 30 days? I mean, talk about maybe some of the steps. I know you touched a little bit on it earlier, but talk a little bit about, so everyone understands, maybe in general, what are some of the steps of the loan process? Like, them submitting their documents, getting the appraisal. Let's talk about some of that.
Sure. So So after the initial loan consultation, or after we've met with somebody, or they've completed their application, and we've gone through that process with them, we try to have all of our documentation in line up front. When they go under contract, we can hit the ground running. So we will send loan documents out. The borrower signs the loan documents. We review them with them. Everybody, the buyers agreed to their terms and the program that we picked that fits them best.
Right.
Once that's happened, the loan goes into something called processing, where we're going to start to do all of the background work that has to be done. Employment verifications, title orders, appraisal orders, everything else that is involved in the loan process. Once that happens, your loan shifts to underwriting. Well, underwriting doesn't happen the same day that an underwriter might see the file, because there's a lot of loans in front of that one that as it came in. So, as the underwriter gets to it, that process could take 2 or 3 days, sometimes longer, until the loan comes out of underwriting. There's always something we're going to need. It doesn't matter. I'm going to call you and say, hey, I need X, Y, and Z. And a lot of it we try to review with you up front, just to prepare a buyer with, hey, these are the things we're probably going to need in the future from you. All that time that's happening, the appraisal's being performed. So we order an appraisal. Well, when can the appraiser who picks up the order that we've placed for the appraisal get to the property? When can the buyer the seller let them into the property? How long is it going to take the appraiser to complete the report? That can take a week or two. Sometimes you just don't know.
Right.
Title as well. Title search has to be performed. All that, the work on the legal side of it then begins as well. So you don't know what obstacles could be hitting title. You don't know. There might be some things that need to be cleared up, so that when the seller sells the home to the buyer, they're passing clean title. You just don't know these things. So, and as time goes on, there's 5 days a week. It just takes time to get things in. That's why it ends up taking about 30 days to get through this process.
Right.
And it doesn't for all of them. We've closed loans in as little as 10 days before in a perfect world.
Sure.
Right.
But that it just takes time. There's a lot of hands involved in a mortgage transaction. It's not like, applying for a credit card or buying a car, where you walk in, you sit down with the finance manager, you sign your papers, you walk out, you have the car.
Right.
It's a little bit more.
It's never been that easy for me.
Well, we need to talk, because I've had that before a couple times.
Okay, yeah, we need to talk.
But no, there's a process, and it just takes time, and just be patient with it, and don't think just because you haven't heard from your loan officer in the last 2 days that something's wrong.
Right.
We're waiting for other information to show up so that we can provide you with an up-to-date status of what's going on.
Yeah. No, and that's great. And I think, from the real estate side of things, that's all important for us to understand, because when we're making an offer, we're trying to pick a closing date, right? So we have to not only coordinate with that process, but we're also coordinating with our clients' schedules.
Right.
Buyer
Exactly.
and seller sometimes. So it's just trying to marry all that up. And as a real estate agent, this is all stuff we're coordinating. We're contacting everyone that's working behind the scenes, and but by no means you should always contact us if you have a question. I mean, we do this stuff every day. So if there's ever a concern, that's what we're here for. And including just if you want to find out about your finances, you just contact the lender. So, okay. We're running out of time here,
All right.
but let's go ahead and last thing, the closing. Okay, so what are some things that you need to get to the closing table, and what are some things that you want the buyer to bring to the closing table? Is there anything important there, or do you recommend maybe do they have to bring money? If they do, should it be a check, cash, wire it?
So never cash, but so at a closing, if a buyer is putting money down or does need to have money into the transaction, we're going to advise them what the settlement agent specifically wants. Do they want a wire? Do they want a cashier's check? We're going to be able to provide them with that dollar amount about 4 days in advance of closing, saying, hey, you're going to need X amount of dollars at closing, and you're going to get this in the form of a cashier's check made payable to the settlement agent. If it's a wire, you need to speak to the attorney directly, call them, call the title company, call the attorney, obtain the wire and instructions directly from them, go to their office, get them. There's a lot of fraud in the world these days.
It's very important.
They'll touch on that right now. Scammers are out. They will try to do anything they can in their power to get your money. Be very careful of what you get in email every time you get something, an email that says, hey, send money, you make a phone call. Do not send money. You want to call the attorney. You want to verify that with them. But so funds for closing, however the settlement agent wants them, wire or cashier's check, never cash. You can't show up with a duffel bag of cash and an ID.
Right.
And then you show up 15 minutes after you've been there. In most cases, you own a home.
Okay. Awesome. Well, Scott, hey, I appreciate your time.
Yeah.
All the knowledge that you dropped. And hey, you are an expert in your field. And anyone out there that's curious about buying a home to see what they are comfortable with. And, I will lastly point out that, you may qualify for $500,000, but that doesn't mean you have to buy a home for $500,000. It's also important to know where you're comfortable with your payment. So that might be less. So he can explain all that to you. So don't feel like you have to know all the ins and outs. Scott's your man. And real quick, Scott, if anybody wants to reach out to you, where do they go?
Well, they can call me. My phone's always on, so they can call me, go to my website, or our office is right in town. Just come in and see me.
All right, what's your website?
Website is gomortgage.com.
Okay.
And all you have to do is look for locations and find Winchester, or Google Go Mortgage Scott Brookshire, and I'll pop right up. Or you can call me on my cell phone at 571-235-1978 anytime.
Great.
Right.
Thanks again, Scott.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you, guys.
Wow, Chris, that was a great episode.
Yeah, it really was. Scott, man, he knows so much stuff about lending. It's awesome.
He really does.
I really hope everyone out there paid attention. But again, if you didn't, what do you have to do? Just call Scott.
Just call Scott.
It's easy as that. Okay, Michelle, you're going to be so excited to hear about this for our next episode. We've got a home inspector coming in, and we know that those things can get pretty crazy.
They can.
We've got an expert professional, Mike Mealy with Pillar to Post. He's coming in, and he's going to probably give us some pretty interesting horror stories and hopefully some good ones too.
Yeah, it could be fun.
Yeah.
It could be fun.
Looking forward to it.
Me too.
All right.
See you next time.